Yo,
Here we are. We are
yo!
live. Yo,
We are in the house.
what is up, ProPresenter Poppy?
Woo! Poppy.
Woo!
Whoop, whoop,
Yeah,
whoop, whoop. We're here. We're here.
we're here,
It's a
man.
Monday morning.
Yep.
A beautiful Monday
You're
morning.
you're you're at your crib. I'm at Glasgow.
Yeah. Your
We're all just
your
chilling.
background is legit. I don't know. I don't know. I think you might have the best background I've seen from someone in a while. In their
Really?
yeah.
Well, it's not. It's not a bad. I'm here. I'm
You're
currently
actually
here.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, we're having fun. Just hanging out with Billy Wonka, hanging out with the unknown.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Hashtag YK YK.
Oh, you're funny. You're funny. You're funny, my friend. Sweet. Well, this is going to be a quicker one, but
Yeah.
um, we have something exciting to talk about. Alpha Key
Yeah.
today. So, do you know what the phrase Alpha Key means, my brother?
I am, as a video person, as a motion graphics person, it's something that has come across my path in the past. Um, I'm not 100% sure exactly how it applies in the ProPresenter world, but I am aware of the term. Yes.
Uh, cool. Well, maybe you can. Why don't you give, since you probably are better explaining it? What does Alpha Keying in the video world mean?
Well, so keying is what's known as like using a green screen or a blue screen. You create you film something on a blue screen or a green screen. Once you take it into a piece of software like Premiere or After Effects or whatever it is that you might use, you can essentially key out or remove that color and then place the image or the footage that you're working with basically on any other on anything else. It's like, let's say somebody is using a communication app, like a Skype per se. They might have like a green screen behind them to allow them to appear as if they're in another country, like Scotland or something like that. Now the alpha is a transparent channel that's built into certain types of video and certain types of footage, which again is what allows you to drop that footage onto something else.
Yeah. So I've always explained it, and you correct me because you're the video expert. I've always explained it like the alpha keying is in essence communicating with the switcher or whatever device that, hey, this part of the content on the screen, there's no content to display there, so don't display
Sure.
anything. Whereas when you
Right.
key and
It's
when you
transparent.
chroma key, which is what we do with green keying or blue keying, we're telling the switcher, the video editing software, like, hey, this shade of green, take everything out that's this color that
Right.
we picked.
Yep.
And so we're going to talk about keying today, primarily how you set up an alpha key. We're not going to go like we could probably spend multiple sessions talking about this, and so as we get going, maybe in a year, there'll be an opportunity to talk more in depth about setting that up and the gear you can use to set it up. But I just want to show you what can be done with alpha keying, why it's helpful, and then also maybe even just give you an example of like why a lot of churches have gone to alpha keying versus chroma keying, because there is a reason
Okay.
that a lot of us in the space, maybe not us, maybe I speak for myself, but I personally prefer alpha keying over chroma keying for a couple of key reasons, and I can share those with you. So, what I
Yeah.
first want to do is show you an example of the service that I help a church each week and crafting for them. And I want to show you what the final product of their service looks like. So I'm going to go to this, and I think making sure that you and I are still talking. My AirPods are there. Shake says
Check.
something. Yeah, cool, cool, cool. So
Check. Check.
we should be able to hear me. So this is whoa. This is the church that I get to help with each week, and you'll notice that they have lower box content for their scripture, and that content is over here in the bottom of the screen. But you'll notice that the video content, the video footage of the pastor is continuing to show up over top of, like, oh, behind what's happening on screen. And this is done through a keying effect, because the only way to accomplish this is one of two ways: either doing a chroma key where you take out the background color of the screen and leave this content, and then put that in front in the switcher in front of your footage that you're cutting between, or alpha keying, where you're telling, in essence, the switcher, hey, this content is only, there's only this content available right now on screen, so only show this, and then
Hmm.
everything else is transparent. So
Right.
that's how you kind of utilize that. The other spot you would utilize this, where you see this a lot, is lyrics on screen for worship. The church that I serve at, they remove their live stream like a lot of churches do, so I don't have that to show you necessarily right at this juncture. But I mean, any sort of, like, if we were to pull up um, Passion City Church, I think their service might be live. You would well, no, their live gathering
This
is
is a
still
real
live.
being.
So we'll mute this, but in essence, the same thing is happening. This kind of same stylistic approach is happening, where you've got lower thirds, and I'm
Mm.
assuming they would be doing alpha keying. It's possible some of the bigger churches still use chroma keying, but this kind of effect, where you've got lyrics in the lower third spot, can be accomplished using that alpha keying method, and it allows you to just
Okay.
put stuff in ProPresenter, send it out to a switcher, and it just show up where you want it to on screen. So
So, so the Alpha King doesn't happen within ProPresenter. It happens in conjunction with your mixer.
So yeah, it's two parts. So ProPresenter can send a signal that's alpha keying enabled,
Hmm.
like send out the signal.
Okay.
So what you have to do is you have to have two connections, because the way, and I'll show you guys this here in a second. Let's actually go to my ProPresenter screen. I'll show you what we're talking about. So ProPresenter, I'm there. You guys should be able to see that. And let's just do a test here. So I'm going to take the sermon spot that we talked about. Sorry, the message that we talked about, this screen there. So what we'll do is we'll do this. We'll come into here. We'll take this slide. So this is our scripture slide. I'm going to make a template for us to play around with and show. Um, and we'll come
And
in.
typically, those that checkerboard pattern denotes alpha, denotes a transparent part
Yes.
of the
Yeah,
image.
that denotes that it's transparent. There's no content there. So, um, So with alpha keying, you would only have to send out this content. And the way that keying works is the following. There's a key and a fill. And I like to describe this, and maybe you have a different way that might be even more helpful, Shake. Um, but with keying, the way I kind of look at keying and fill is like back in the day when you had those stencils, and you would like put a stencil
Hmm.
down and you would spray paint. Like, that's in essence what an alpha key is doing. There's two parts to it. So
Yeah.
the key
Right.
is the stencil. So what is the switcher saying? Hey, this is the part of the screen that's active. If it's a full screen slide, it's going to be the whole thing. But if it's a part of the
Hmm.
screen, then the stencil is the key is, hey, this is the only part of the screen that's active. Only show content from ProPresenter on this part of the screen. Then the fill is
Sure.
the color, or what does it look like that's filled in. So the way you would
Sure.
accomplish this is
In video world, we'd call that the mat.
right, right. So I think the best way to show this is, if we were to, let's see, contrast, brightness. I'm trying. So like this is the key. This is how it would look in my switcher.
Yeah. Okay.
That's telling the switcher, hey, the only thing that's active right now is this item right here. But the fill is this. The fill is here's the color, here's what text, here's what content is actually being displayed in
Right.
this thing. So it's two parts. So it's a key and a fill. And so that signal has to be sent out of ProPresenter in some way. There's many ways to do that. There's a couple of different ways
Oh,
to do it.
really?
Yeah, you have to set that up to send it that way because you in essence have to communicate with switcher. Here's the key and here's the fill. Because if you look at,
Got it.
let's look at an 810 software. Well, actually, this is going to be interesting if I can get this pulled up for you guys real quick and show you. Let's see. Give me one sec, guys. Let's see if I can, on the fly, get you guys set with 810. I'm actually not set up on an 810 software. So, in the 810 software control panel, let's do this. Let's go this route. We'll do this. Let's don't save. Cancel. Cancel. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our web app, see if we can pull up an 810 software app control images. So over in the 810 software, you have a it's in the it'd be in the media player. Yeah, there it is. If you look here, so this we'll scroll down to get to that. So there you go. So you see here, you have in the palette section, you have color generators, but then you have upstream key and downstream key would be lower. And it's in these sections that you will actually set what channel, what actual port you plugged in the key and what actual port you plugged in the fill. And that is what will
Steve,
show. Go ahead,
are
sorry.
you sure?
Oh yeah, hold on, I'm not
Are we
showing.
seeing that?
No, hold on, we're not seeing that.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay.
So we'll go here. So in the actual ATEM software control, there's an actual like in eight, and this is Black Magic. So if you're controlling with a different switcher, it'll be different for everything. But in the palette section, you'll have upstream key, color generators, transitions. There will be a downstream key option more than likely, and that's where you would set up your key. So if you look here, um, you'll see the downstream key. There's a fill source and a key source, and that's where you'll actually set what is my key source, what is my fill source, and I can set those inputs. And then once I've set that, you're going to go to ProPresenter, and I set up I use Alpha Keying at the church that I help with each week. And so what we've done is we've go to our configuration for our screens and our settings, and I have a program alpha setup. I'm using a Decklink Duo card, which in essence allows me to send out the signal via SDI. I can send out two channels. But then you go to this Alpha Keying tab, you set up a pre-multiplied key, and then you have a configuration that you can actually configure it to the output that you want. And so once you configure that alpha key to go out the Decklink Duo, which the Decklink Duo automatically takes the port that you're on. The first port is your key, and the second port is your fill. And there's some complexities there. If you guys have questions about how to do it with a Decklink Duo, I'd encourage you to go to YouTube and look up Brad Weston's Alpha Key Decklink Duo setup. He walks you through how to set that up. But that allows you to set up an alpha key setup to your switcher. And then you're just sending content through this ProPresenter ecosystem out your screen. So for me, my my program alpha setup is set up. And so when I click a slide and put that on screen, so let's say for example I'm in a song, when I put lyrics out, it's going to show those lyrics out of my switcher, but only show the lyrics on the lower third. It's not going to show everything else. So in my room, I'm sending a whole entire set of background and lyric content, but on the stream, I'm only sending this little lower third as well. So the same thing happens when I get into my sermon. I'm sending different lower thirds based on what I have, and those items would show up as lower third elements over top of the video switch stuff that's happening.
So then in this case, ProPresenter is kind of dynamically generating the key.
Correct. It's
Okay,
you can set
you're
it.
not
You can
having
set it
to.
for ProPresenter to be the one that's sending the key information, but you can
Okay,
also change it to, if you wanted to, you can change it to have the key. That's why I call it a key. I use pre-multiplied and I have ProPresenter sending the information into the switcher. You could
okay,
potentially go the route of having the switcher look at that information. I tend to prefer to just do the ProPresenter route. One thing that actually I want to play with, I haven't had a chance to play with, but it is a feature that's now available, is it used to be you can only do this with a capture card of some sort to create this alpha keying effect. You can now do this with
sure.
HDMI cables. So if you have the ability to run two HDMI cables out of your computer, two screens in essence, you could run the alpha keying, the key and the fill, down HDMI cables, which is very interesting for people who are on the ATEM like extremes. Those are HDMI
Mhm.
plugins. They don't have SDI inputs. And so it can help you for a switcher that maybe is just HDMI based. You can run HDMI. You can run that signal down in HDMI, which traditionally that's not been the case up until a few months ago when that software was released. But what we used to do, what used to be the case, very much, originally, and what probably still is and used in a lot of environments. I'm sure that there's a lot of production people that could chime in and say that they still do this because it is very common. But you can chroma key, and chroma keying is when we
Mhm.
used to use the green screen, and we would have the green with the content, and we would key out the green and leave the item that we wanted to show. When we did lyrics, we did it the same way. We would, remove all of the extraneous stuff. We would have our text. We'd set our text up the way we want. We'd add a drop shadow. We'd add a stroke, and we could
Mhm.
have all that set there.
So
Um,
then in that case, ProPresenter is not sending out extra info.
Yeah, you would send out one output for this. So you could send
Yeah.
out one.
Okay.
This will be used if you are in a situation where you can't send out two signals for an
Okay.
alpha key setup. So if you only
Sure.
have the ability to send one output out of your computer, you could send out an HDMI signal, have it be chroma keying and keying out the green. The one thing I would encourage you to keep in mind is when you use chroma keying, you need to be mindful of what is on screen at the time because anything green close to that shade will get keyed out. So if you have a
Right.
slide in your pre-roll deck that has half green in the center of it, when it gets to that, that'll be keyed out, and whatever's been on
Right.
screen behind it will be there. So you just
Yeah.
need to, know that that you may need to keep that in mind. Um,
And if you can't
Also,
do green screen, you can do blue screen.
correct, you can do blue screen, but then you know, if you're a
Yeah.
church that has blue logos and then you have
Right.
green content, now you're like, well, I got to go to purple, so you got to keep that in
Yeah.
mind. And
Right.
one thing that the reason I traditionally went away from alpha keying or went to alpha keying over chroma keying was I just found that this got really obnoxious at times because I don't know if you guys have ever had this. Maybe you guys have never dealt with this, but I'd have volunteers that maybe are running a switcher and things happen. You push the wrong um, input, and if you push the input that's coming with the chroma key signal, you flash on screen a huge green light flash. So that would
Oh, really?
potentially, yeah. So I had moments where my green screen got caught on screen because someone
Hmm.
was switching and they were going through the inputs, cutting to different cameras, and they by accident hit the one. Even though I
Oof.
may have placed it off to the side, they somehow by accident hit the one, and that
Yeah.
flashed up. So I personally love the alpha keying method because it allowed me to turn the key on all the time during like most of the service. It allows me to send the signal from ProPresenter and let ProPresenter put stuff up and take stuff off, and there's no switcher can't they can still go and I guess select the key input and show it, but it kind of takes away the whole like we having to turn the key on, turn the key off, manage that between both situations. And so that's why I personally like when I could go to Alpha Keying in six, I went to it and we did it, and I've never looked back to that. Um, yeah. So it's great for volunteers. It's once it's set up, it's a little more complex to set up, but once it's set up, it runs very well. It makes a lot of sense that like, okay, if there's something on the ProPresenter machine, then it'll show up on screen, and if there's not something on the ProPresenter machine, it won't show up on screen. It's very easy to communicate what's happening to that. The one other thing I want to mention is Luma King. So some of you may potentially be Luma King because back in the day, Luma King was kind of like I did Luma King for a little bit. It's not great, and here's I'd love to show you why Alpha King is superior to Luma King. But Luma King is keying out black. So
Mhm.
there would be times the churches are like, well, I don't want to deal with the whole green or blue. It's taking out stuff. So we're going to key out the darkest shade of black. Well, that's great, but then what would happen is like any shadows you have or drop shadows, those would all be taken out because as you can
Yep.
see here, anything black would be gone. So it would be great for if your text was white, and it'd be great if your slides were very rarely the deepest and darkest black. But you'd have to do all sorts of work to make sure that your production, your communications team took everything and made it one shade lighter. So the way you tricked it was like making it gray instead of black and kind of shifting the color a little bit. That way it still showed up. But again, now you're like having to manipulate a whole bunch of content
Right.
to make that work. And so what I just found was alpha keying is the answer to creating a simple keying setup where you, in essence, become like cohesive in that if there's nothing showing on the ProPresenter machine, my cameras and everything are live. And then if I want to take over pre-service and post-service, when I put something on the ProPresenter machine, it takes over the whole screen and it shows perfectly. And it just created a
Right.
seamless setup that visually made sense, that visually flowed well, that visually very rarely had any issue. Because what you can do with a lot of those switchers is you could potentially like safeguard yourself where you run those inputs into your switcher and then like you move those inputs like you don't like you safe those inputs like with the A10s you won't be able to really because those are like tied to the inputs. Input one is on the board, input two, but some of your more higher end production switchers you could actually like hide those buttons so that they're not in
Hmm.
in a layer and they're kind of off to another layer that no one can touch unless they know how to get there.
Right.
So it created it. So yeah, alpha keying is the way to go. And so the way you do that is with those two signals, alpha a key and a fill, and using those items in a switcher, putting them together, and that helps you, allows you to create that seamless lower third or full screen effect and taking over. Um, and the way that I do this in Pro is like I showed you again. I'll transition here and show us one more time. So in your Pro Presenter menu, you go to Settings, you go to Screens, configure your screens, and if we were going to add one, like let's do it, do a placeholder. If I add a new screen, and this is my stream setup, then I can select the alpha keying, pre-multiplied, and then you can see there that there's two setups, key and a fill, and now I can set up how I want it to route out. And once you set up the key and fill and the output target for the second one, once you do the first one, your second one would show up. You can route those the way that you want, and then route those into your switcher and set it up. And that's the way that I prefer to key stuff onto my iMag situations. What you think? Make sense?
That's, yeah, it's fascinating. That is an area that I've never had to delve into because I never really used iMag or if I was broadcasting to YouTube or something like that, I would typically like edit and then ship out. So I wasn't really doing anything live to to streaming. But it's super fascinating.
Yeah, it's uh it's fascinating. It's a little bit, you gotta. It's kind of. It's taken me a while even to get to a spot where I feel comfortable talking about it a little bit, and maybe
Right.
even after this, we'll find out that there's some things that I can learn about it. But keying people, it's like, what does that mean? I don't understand, and it is a little bit of a complex idea. But once you kind of what kind of helped me was seeing how it comes into a video switcher and understanding. Oh, okay, so that looks like this.
Sure.
That looks like this. Okay, what does that mean for executing that out? Um, where I've seen this used some, where it can be really helpful to use keying as well, is in a live environment on streams. I don't know if you guys see this here, but Passion has their logo a lot of times animating in their streams, and I've seen some other churches do this as well. This is their actual but they a lot of times at the top right. Let's see if I can get to the beginning of the song and show you. But like up at the top right, they will often animate like a logo that's coming in for the song. It's almost like telling you what song they're doing. They used to do it a lot. I'm not seeing it here. But it's kind of like this, where you kind of can bring in a logo like this. And I've done this a lot with like a prop. So you could potentially use a prop layer and bring in your logo, which for our sake, I'll just see if I've got a Church Visuals logo even downloaded. There it is. So I can bring in a logo and I can have it sit here like this, and I can have my screen going, but then I can turn the logo on, and if I have my looks set up properly, which again, this is a let's go to the proper look. Just do all screen. So if I'm looking at, you see the logo down there. I could bring a logo into my stream and almost have an
Hmm.
overlay going. And because you're using Alpha Keying, um, you can add that stuff in very easily and not be worried about how it's going to look or what's happening. So I love Alpha
And
Keying. I'm a huge
maybe
proponent of it. If you need any help, let me know.
right. Maybe this goes without saying, but you can use a PNG, but it seems like you can use an MOV file as well.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So yeah, in order to bring stuff into ProPresenter that would show up as an alpha key, like enabled, you'd have to have a PNG because PNGs have transparent
Mhm.
backgrounds for still
Right.
images, and then for video content, it has to be an MOV and your alpha key, your alpha channel enabled.
Right.
So if you're
Yep.
where that's helpful, like so for example, if you go to some of our timer overlay packs, the church visuals that we've released
Hmm.
MOV files of the countdowns, and so they're just a countdown with transparency around it. So you can bring those into your switcher into ProPresenter, lay those in, and then once you play that, it's only going to show the countdown. So if you build within ProPresenter inherently will set up that what's active, what's not active. But if you bring something in, you need to consider what does that look like. So make sure you're bringing in a PNG or a transparent MOV file that would then play the way that you want it to play.
Sure.
Yep, that's a good tip right there. So yeah, so a little shorter today
Yeah.
because you know, there's more we could dive into with that. I think in a future session, I'd love to show you how to actually set that up, cabling wise into a switcher and what that looks like.
Mm.
Um, Maybe in the summer we can do a little bit of a longer session on a Monday and show you some of that. Get another camera set up and do that. But for
Like a
now,
field trip.
Alpha Keying out of ProPresenter. How do you set that up? How do you do it? What does that look like? If you have questions on how to execute that in your church, in your setting, feel free to reach out to us because I could definitely would love to be a resource and help you do that. If you need help creating content for that, Sheik could also help you do that. Sheik's a master at
Hmm.
making stuff for that has
Creating.
transparency and creating stuff like that for sure.
Just like I created
This world, yeah, it looks
this
like
experience.
looks like you created this.
You know.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Looks
Yeah.
looks like you're at a doggy park, kind of. You know.
Well, what is a doggy park if not
Like
a
you got,
park
like you
for
got,
all of us
like you
dogs?
got a little hill, like you got some hills there to run around. Like it's kind
Yeah.
of. Well, this is a shorter one, guys, today, but this topic is one that we could probably spend hours talking about. But I just want to kind of intro into Alpha Keying and the different types of keying within ProPresenter. If you have questions or thoughts, feel free to shoot us an email at propresenter@churchvisuals.com. We'd be happy to touch base with you and answer questions you have. If you are interested in pieces of gear that I've used, feel free to reach out there. We'll also drop a link to on our Facebook share. I'll drop a link to the forum where if you have any questions or thoughts or
All right.
input of people that we should touch base with or have on the show or things, topics that we should cover that are specific to your church and where you're at, feel free to drop us a submission on that. And we'd be happy to do that or drop a comment in this video and we'll look at that as well. So we're going to take next week off. I'm going to be on vacation with my family. My brother is getting married in South Carolina. So
Wow.
we're going to be down in the south, getting him hooked up, getting him hitched, I should say. Not
Yeah,
hooked.
I love it.
And so then we'll plan to be back Monday the 17th, Monday, March
Yep.
17th. Is that right? Yeah. 3rd, 10th,
March or 18th.
18th, March 18th. My apologies. March 18th, around 11:15,
Be back.
11:30 a.m. We'll be back for another session on ProPresenter. So that gives you 2 weeks. Drop some lines, drop some information of what you'd like us
Yep.
to cover if you have anything. If not, we'll come up with something to talk about. And yeah, we would love to see you. So,
Yeah,
Shake,
we
any
would.
any transition wrap up thoughts?
No, Steve, you did it again. The Pro Presenter Poppy never fails to deliver.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but I have your help, so it makes it easy. So awesome. Well, just know that we're
All
praying for
right.
you guys, you churches, people that
That's
are
right.
watching. We're thankful for you and how you serve in the church. If this is helpful, if this was not helpful, drop us comments. Let us know how we can make this the best resource and tool for you. We love talking all things Pro Presenter, and we'll be in touch. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Later.
All right, everybody.
Peace.